All right. Looks like we are live for the Gaytriarchy, whatever number. I have no idea what number it is because I am not the person who keeps track of that. And that is how it is. And I do have a window open. God damn it. Okay. So, are you a man? Are you a gay man? Are you a man at all? Are you somebody who just really doesn't like feminism? That's really ultimately only the only real prerequisite for being here is that you've noticed that feminism is really annoying and you like being around gay guys who just completely hate feminists and feminism as an ideology. Now, do I hate feminists as people? And like that like people always act like that's a very extreme thing to say. Well, if there's anyone I hate right now, it's feminists. Like so yes. I mean, it's like, isn't there more extreme words than hate? There's loathe, there's detest, there's despise. Like I think all of those are very extreme words, and ultimately the feminists just don't stop. They just don't stop with their little power grabs. They are still convinced that they are winning. They still are convinced that everybody's going to have to okay, I made my little video yesterday about Trump derangement syndrome, and I think it was one of my it's been so far a very, very well received video. Like it's gotten a lot of views in a very short time and compared to my other recent videos, and people have really liked it so far. And the thing is that like Trump derangement syndrome, this weird feminist thing, it's this authoritarian thing where affirmative action, minorities being able to work with the authorities to get special protections for Hammer, your mic keeps making noise. Try to work on that if you could.
Okay. Crap.
Yeah, it's just really here. Hold on. Here, I'll turn it down a little bit, maybe, or maybe you should turn down the sensitivity.
1 second. Let me.
Okay.
Hi, Hammer. How are you doing?
Hey. 1 moment. How's that? Is that better?
Yeah, it's better. So, and actually, you're now that I'm thinking, Geek Tao, your sensitivity is a bit high too. If you could maybe turn down the volume.
I can't really do much about it. I'm sorry.
Oh, could you turn it up towards your like maybe can you turn the side thing up a little bit?
I can try.
Yeah, no, that'll help. That'll help a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what I was saying, is that like, feminists live in this alternate reality. Like they definitely do. They live in this alternate reality where they simultaneously are the most privileged people in the world. If you're somebody that benefits from feminist law, like if you're somebody that benefits from all of these little special rules, like you get affirmative action, you get all these discrimination things, nobody's allowed to disagree with you unless they're, if they do, they're mansplaining. Well, like if you get all of that crap, you are the most privileged person. Now it's not everybody. It generally all males are left out of that, though. If you're a gay black man, you can get a lot of it. But if you
you get a lot of what?
these compensatory benefits is the privileges that are afforded under feminist law under the intersectional aristocracy. If you get to be a part of the intersectional aristocracy, you're incredibly privileged, and that's just how it is. And
actually, I got a real interesting story because I was talking the other day to one of my really old friends.
Wait, can you remember the story? And let me just finish the thought, and then
sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Okay. So the thing is with the intersectional aristocracy is that these people were given this power by the authorities, and the authorities told them that they would never have to, essentially that like, hey, for centuries and centuries, you have been disadvantaged. You're still disadvantaged. and things are changing now. The times are changing. Everybody else needs to check their privilege, and you know, if they ever say anything mean to you that makes you mad or anything, you can come to us, and also here's some free handouts and blah 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 blah, and we're winning. There's more of us. We're winning. And so it was that sense of overconfidence that they sold all these people on. Like, they made all these people believe that, okay, there's actually more of you than there are normal people. And then, of course, when the election happened, the thing was that Hillary Clinton supposedly won the election because she got 3 million more votes, which is completely, like, I don't believe it's untrue. And I actually think that I was actually unregistered as a voter, and I'm going to have to call them up on Monday and try to see if I'm one of the people that they unregistered because they thought I would flip. And because I was registered with the Democrats, and they're the people who would have done it. And so, yeah, like, that's the type of people, they live in this alternate reality. And so we are the people who are not in the alternate reality, and we are talking about things, and that is the opening of this show. And so what was that story that you were going to say?
Well,
oh, and by the way, here are my two guests. This is Geektao Berserker, the Swedish guy that he's been on before, but he was not showing his face. And this is the Liberal Hammer, old friend of my channel. Liberal Hammer was used to be on my channel, like, but like over a year ago or something is when he would come on. Maybe not quite that long, but a while ago, a while back. And he then took mostly a break from YouTube, and so here he is back. They've both been on the show, and other guys might show up. Not entirely sure.
Yeah. So, okay. Hey guys. Sorry, I'm gonna speak broken English again. Yeah, with a terrible Swedish accent. Anyway, my story was actually, I was talking to an old friend of mine. He was very much like, anti-SJW, and then became an SJW because hence he got a job offering at the gay organization here in Sweden. Now he has reawakened to our side, to the dark side again.
Ha!
And he... Yeah, and here's the thing. He actually told me something.
We aren't the dark side. Don't say that. Don't say that.
Bad Swede.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just couldn't help myself. Sorry, I'm a little bit into Star Wars sometimes. Anyways,
we're the fucking Rebel Alliance. We're the one that have to have like little secret meetings and like hide our faces and that kind of a thing. Like there's no way to I mean, it's more fun to say I'm to the dark side, but that's just not what it is,
Of course not. But anyways, semantics. Anyways, so he actually told me what he has actually been more or less like coerced into doing, and one of them was actually, we were talking about, okay, some of us, some gay guys did actually try to, doing the pussy thingy. He actually was convinced by this gender is a social construct guy, ish, whatever you call them, that he should have sex with this guy. Now, this guy
was it a trans guy?
Yeah, it was a trans guy.
Oh my god! Can you get him on an interview with me? Because I have been talking about that crap. No, I have been talking about that in my videos for so long. Here's the thing. I have been victim of these, I don't want to say very overt, but certainly like trans guys were definitely hitting on me, and it was this thing where like I knew that I had to find a way out of the situation. So I didn't want to, because I knew that they would freak out if I said like I know I won't fuck your pussy, I'm gay, and like I knew that and I know that these people do this, and but that was in the old, like that was when before the full-on social justice craziness like took place. And now I know that there has to be some people that can like testify about it. So if I can get an interview with this guy, I'd love it. So
yeah, sure, but his English is horrible, no offense. Okay. Yeah, okay. So but I can try to actually get him on sometimes. Anyway, anyways, so he actually did tell me about a lot of crazy, weird stuff that they were actually going have to do, and not only like having sex with trans men, they were also made to believe that you as a man, biological man, don't have a real dick. You have a meat dick because a real dick is a plastic one, which is kind of hilarious when you think about it.
So they're trying to kid. Who do they think they're kidding with that shit? Like that's just so stupid.
I know it's RFSL in a nutshell. Come on. Oh well, so it's
if you've ever seen a constructed penis, it very much looks like a hot dog that was put in a blender. So if there's anything about a meat dick, yeah, if there's a meat dick, it sure as hell is that. Sorry.
Yeah, but it sounds a lot funnier when you say it in Swedish, because it's like, oh my god, you get so many mental pictures. Anyways, yeah. So ever since my friend actually had this encounter with the one who actually went to the freeze section to actually get a filet mignon stitched attached to their vaginas, he has reawakened. I mean, really, I understand it completely. I would also wake up quite severely and dramatic if I had to put my hot dog in a sushi buffet. Oh well.
Yeah. Well, that does remind me of when I've been called. I know I've talked to you before about it, Prince, but I don't think I've talked to Berserker about it. Is when I was called transphobic when I responded to the question, "Would you have sex with a trans man?" and I said no. I was called transphobic, and it was an interesting discussion because I'm like, no, I am attracted to the cock. I like the cock. I like how it functions. I like its arousal. I like everything about it. And they go,
it looks
oh,
pretty.
So, it was great though, because they go in this direction. Oh, so all you think is that a guy is worth is his cock. So of course they go in that direction. And then they know I'm married, because I'm like, well, I mentioned my husband. They go, well, what if, heaven forbid, something were to happen and your husband were to lose his penis? I go, okay, first of all, and they go, well, would you leave him because he doesn't have a dick anymore? And I goes, well, first of all, heaven forbid, if something were, first of all, no, I wouldn't leave my husband. But also, second, if my husband were to, heaven forbid, lose his dick in any way, he still wouldn't have a vagina. All right, he still wouldn't have a vagina.
Yeah. I remember you mentioning that to me before, and it's a great point. Like it's totally true. And the thing is about, like, okay, there's two things I'm taking issue with the okay. One, I think that if that conversation ever comes up with you again or anybody listening to this, you were catering way too much to allowing them to frame the conversation by even entertaining the notion. And they say, "Would you ever have sex with a trans man?" You say no, and then they try to say some other thing, and they say no means no. Stop being rapey. That's all you fucking got to say. Like, that's because, I mean, like, because they speak their language, right? And it's fair too. Like, it's not unfair to say that. The other thing is that, when they talk about transgender bottom surgery and like, okay, I really do sincerely hope that there is really, really good bottom surgery for people to get inverted genitals so that it can become like what they would like it to be and make them happy. And I just, for the record, I also hope that my brain can be put into a cyborg for a while before I die, because I have back pain, so like, hey, just for the record. But like, you hear these stories where they say, like, they all swear that the vagina that you can get after a male to female trans person, after it's inverted into a vagina, supposedly a gynecologist can't tell the difference, and it creates its own lubricant. That can't be true. Like no, I don't believe that that's actually true. I feel like that's such a dramatic underestimation of what there is to a vagina. You know?
Well, I'd agree that that's an exaggeration to say that a gynecologist wouldn't be able to tell. Maybe like the average person not really paying attention and they just want to fuck when it.
Maybe the average drunk guy at like in an alley.
In an alley. We're bringing in the alley play. No. But no, I definitely agree with that. To say that a gynecologist wouldn't be able to tell, that.
And they've been saying that since the 1990s. I remember, like it was in. Do you remember Taxi Cab Confessions on HBO?
Yes.
That was such an edge. Like when you're
that show.
Yeah, when you're a kid and you first saw that, it was like, oh my god, you know.
Berserker, do you know what we're talking about?
Ish. I guess so.
Okay, so it was one of the first reality shows. It was in the 90s when reality television, because so the 2000s was when reality television completely took over American television, but they had this in the late 90s, and it was on HBO. And HBO, they can show anything. I don't think that they can show an erect male penis, but they can show a male penis. But I think not erect, and I don't think that they can show genitals having sex. Like that would be adult, but this is rated R, meaning that I was able to watch this as a kid, you know, and I would try not to watch it when my dad was awake. And so at about midnight or so, they would show this thing called Taxi Cab Confessions, and they would put a hidden camera in cabs, and the driver would be supposed to talk to these people, and they would go to like Vegas or New York City, and and so there was this one trans girl who, you know, she still had her dick, and she was like, no, she's like, I'm not going to get mine chopped off, but you know, I know lots of friends who do, and a gynecologist can't tell the difference, but I'm not going to get it chopped off because if you get it chopped off, then you can't come. And they say that they can come, but they can't. And every girl I know who got theirs chopped off, they committed suicide within a year. So I'm never going to get that chopped off. And that was in the 90s. And so it's like, okay, that sounds altogether suspect in the 90s. And there's no way that the technology was that good. I just don't believe it. I mean, they didn't even have good facial plastic surgery in the 90s.
So, oh God, no. So Prince, can I touch on something quick? Actually, because your choice of wording reminded me of something from when I was younger. So earlier when you spoke, you said erect male penis, and then you said male penis. Now, it's funny because when I was younger, I would say male penis, female vagina. And it was funny because I was a lot younger at the time, and I kept saying that. And it was my older siblings and people that I knew would correct me, because if I, for example, said, well, a woman's vagina, they would say, is there any other kind? A male's penis, as opposed to what? A female's penis? So it's interesting, though, because I think about it now, because I then corrected that, especially when I studied human sexuality in college, by the time I got to college and was studying to be a sex therapist. But it's interesting, though, because that language that I was using as a kid by mistake, not really even thinking about it, is very much what's in practice now. And so it's just interesting to me when you said that, erect male penis, a male penis. When I was younger, people would say to me, as opposed to what, a female's penis?
No, it's worth noting that used to be a different. I mean, people get annoyed by my usage of the word cisgender, which I don't normally really use in my speaking patterns. Like, it's not natural vernacular for me to use it.
Then they should be happy they're not living here, because I mean, we literally actually say, well, a real man, a real woman. We don't sugarcoat it. So yeah.
But see, I'm always going to put words like if I'm actually talking specifically about the LGBT community or whatever, and I'm referring specifically to gay men, I mean cisgender gay men. So if it's a video, I'm going to make that very, very clear. But then I get these like straight people commenting, and they're like, just say man, all right? And it's like, should I not say gay? Should I say man? Oh wait, I have to differentiate because I am gay. I am talking about gay men. I am talking about cisgender gay men. And yes, there are people that will get confused. But yeah, I'm not, when I say male penis, I'm not necessarily saying it because of like I'm thinking like it never even occurred to me that I was saying it, and I wonder how long that I've been saying that. You know, I it's never even occurred to me.
Yeah, well, that's never occurred to me either until I got older, until people pointed it out.
Actually, there's been another situation with another friend of mine, which since I became active on YouTube-ish, he actually contacted me, and he was bisexual-ish. In his case, he is actually a true bisexual. No, he really is.
No, I
The
know
thing is,
they exist.
yeah, but he actually said to me that, well, you know what? I'll stop dating girls. I'm not gonna touch them. I'm not gonna look at them. They're too fucking annoying nowadays. So now I'm only looking for the dick. So he has actually completely cut off women from his life. So now he's only dating mostly twinks, but okay, I suppose there's some likeness. But anyways, yeah. So and he actually complained about this when it comes to like feminism here in Sweden, at least, that it has become too ingrained with the female identity or whatever, so he just doesn't give a damn anymore. So that's why he's just decided to go full gay instead. So.
See, it's funny because I never thought there would be a point in my life when I was younger, especially growing up where I did and how I did and in the culture that I did, that I would come to a point where I would talk to a straight guy about dating and be like, damn, I feel so blessed to be gay. I am so glad to be gay.
Oh yeah.
Like some of the stories that I hear about from you know modern guys about dating modern feminists, I'm just like, and not even necessarily feminists, just women influenced by the feminist culture. And I'm like, damn, I am so glad to be gay.
Well, you know, and you don't. The funny thing is that you don't even really have to hear the stories from the straight guys themselves. All you have to do is witness them interacting with women on Facebook and see how terrified they are of all of them. Like you see these poor straight guys, and they say, "Oh, it seems kind of messed up. There was like this, you know, wrongful accusation of this black quarterback on this university campus, and he went to jail for 5 years, and it turned out that the 3 women conspired against him to make something up, and that's messed up." And the guy shares it, and then like 3 women are all like, "Why are you sharing this? It makes you sound like an MRA or something." Blah, 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 blah. And he's like, "Oh my god, I'm sorry." And it's like, you know, like what? You know? And then of course I show up to save the day.
Save the day with the gay. Anyway, yeah.
I'm like, I am an MRA. So what? Well, it's almost like men are people. It's like they have rights, like people.
Well, Prince, come on. Who better than gay men to help straight men discover their balls and dicks again? Seriously.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
True.
I mean, it is interesting because as you mentioned, Prince, earlier, I went, you know, MIA for a while. I had you know, a lot of changes, just like my perspective, broadened my perspective on a lot of things, and really tried to, you know, hone my perspective. So I am back creating content again, and I am going to create that content for you, by the way, that video that I promised. But I'm also doing something that I haven't done since I was an activist and more involved in the community. Is twice this year I went to a local college to speak in front of students. There was a sociology professor. He, what it was is there was a friend of mine who used to go and speak in his class, but this year he couldn't because of his schedule, a schedule conflict. So he gave the professor my number. And the professor reached out to me and asked me to come in. And I was wondering, I was like, oh God, I'm going to go to a college campus to speak. Now, mind you, it was a small group. It wasn't like a huge like auditorium. Well, I hadn't done it in so long. And I wasn't sure how I was going to interact with the students, to be honest, because things hadn't gone completely crazy on college campuses when I was in college. It hadn't happened yet. So I went, and it was interesting. There wasn't so much that. I don't know if it's because I'm in a smaller area, so there wasn't so much of a feel of that. I did make it clear that I wasn't afraid. I wasn't going to be overly sensitive to questions. Because one thing I want to make clear to you, and this was a hard lesson to learn when I was coming up, as an activist, was that not everything that you take as offensive comes from an offensive place. So I made it clear, don't be afraid to ask your questions. And people
Yeah.
asked, they definitely weren't afraid to ask their questions. And there was this one kid, this one guy who who made a statement, and I could tell there were other people around him, especially the women, were going to jump on him. I could tell they had this instinct to come to like my defense as a gay, come to like gay men's defense, because he actually mentioned about, well, I don't like he's like, well, he goes, well, I mean, this gay man, he's like, well, there's, I don't know, I have a thing issue with like the gay men that shove it in your face. They're just out there, the flamboyant, like he was expressing himself in that fashion, and it was funny because I could tell the energy around him from some of the students. They were definitely gearing up, and I'm like, okay, let's address this. Let's just on it, and we actually ended up with a discussion, helped calm down the mood. And I always say that I approach it with a sense of humor. Like, for example, I joke. I used to get, like, one of the things that would offend me is like someone would say to me, well, especially when I took on more of my, the look that I have now, they would say to me, oh, you're the kind of gay I like. And I used to be like, oh, what do you mean by that? But now I'm like, oh, is that like breed of dog? Is that like, preferring a German Shepherd to a poodle? and it usually makes them laugh. And then we have like a discussion. So I take it, and that was my main message with them. I was like, developing a sense of humor in life is really important.
I just came up with my answer to that. If next time someone tells me you're the type of gay that I like, I'll be like, oh, that's cool. I'm envious. I still haven't figured out my type.
Well, basically, I just use an insult here that gays are using against really pissy, bitter women. That's paper cut clit. That's all I'm used to.
You told me this before. I love it.
Yeah.
So, by the way, if you're just showing up and tuning into the broadcast, a number of people have not yet smashed that like button. And also, I want to remind you guys that this is on my live streaming channel, which means that you can actually send super chats, and we will make sure to read your thing out loud because it will be with money attached. And so, yeah. And I think Plato Emerson probably said, I've never had anyone say that to me. I imagine that he's referring to you're the type of gay that I like. And do you want to know why that is, Plato Emerson? Is because you're a horribly annoying person, and nobody probably has ever said that to you. And that's just the truth. And I really hope that they like stop paying you to stalk me and apparently Chadwick Moore on social media or whatever. I'm joking. I don't know that they pay this guy, but it really seems like it. He's really irritating. I have to go to the bathroom and grab my dessert. Hold on.
Oh, well.
What's this? He's taking a bathroom break. How do you feel about that, Berserker? Do you feel abandoned? I feel abandoned.
Yeah, oh dear, yes. I feel desolate, desperate. And oh my god, the pain and the pain.
Did you see my comment on your last video, by the way?
No, not really. Sorry, I am a horrible person. I don't check any comments anymore.
Wait, you were talking to the younger generation of gay
Yeah.
men?
Mm-hmm.
I left, like, at least I view it as an entertaining comment because I think everything I say is entertaining. No, but
Well, of course it is. You're kind of like Alaska Thunderfuck, but without the drag.
your slip up was funny. Which
yeah.
It's out there now. Anyways, but Yeah, I could do the bearded drag. You know, you could do the bearded drag, get the bearded woman going. Nah, just.
No. It would be just really unsettling for you to have makeup. I would actually never be able to look at you the same way. Although I would probably assume that you would be a Bulgarian chalga singer, but you know.
Videos you sent. Oh God, no, the video.
Yeah.
I'm just like the video that you sent. That was just wrong. That was just wrong, by the way.
Yeah. But I
Uh,
like it. They're actually making fun of Russians. They're making fun of communists and feminists, and because it's kind of fun weird here in Europe. Because when it comes to like feminism in Eastern Europe or in the Balkans, it's kind of like, what do you mean? It's kind of like that, and then being pretty like, okay, so you're a faggot. Good for you. I don't care. It's kind of like that. Hmm. Oh
oh
yeah.
no, that's fucking hilarious. Oh God, no, things have been crazy. I actually was late to the stream because I was in a debate. Well, to me, I prefer discussions. I mean, I know
Hmm.
debates are discussions, but I prefer more relaxed discussions. But it was all over. We were going at it about definitions because the one thing that drives me nuts about the left is their absolute need to try to redefine words in the dictionary. And
Well, I see that as imperialism because I mean, coming from a language that doesn't really have the English buzzwords and everything, and when we actually try to actually incorporate different kinds of like cisgender, whatever, those fake words, and when I'm trying to apply them into Swedish, I'm just seeing it as, oh, you know what? They're constantly complaining about colonialism. You know what? This is colonialism. That's what it really looks like. So, well, they kind of lose their shit over this. Also, since started to become real critical when it comes to like, you know what? Stop. Try to actually put words in people's mouths. Just stop. That's kind of like that.
well, it's funny because okay, so I take this approach, and this is what gets me in trouble. When I don't think that there is a chance for a productive discussion, I become sarcastic and I start trolling a bit. If there's a chance for an actual discussion, I will remain more serious. But once I get the feeling that I'm dealing with a nutter, whether they be right wing or left wing, I go all in, balls deep. And it's funny because, like, for example, there was this person going off about colonization. Colonization of the like white men colonizing. And I was
Mhm.
like, well, what's so bad about that? I'm like, my land has been, I mean, I personally, I've been colonized by many white men. I didn't have a problem. But no, it's so and oh god, that's the triggering. That really, I actually did it today to where they blocked me and everything. They talked about privilege, like because what they were saying was so predictable. It was so, and as someone who very much was an activist and identified with the left once, I knew where they were going because I made there's this meme that shows it's the man walking with the woman and is looking at someone else. But this, and they always change it out. But this one has the woman, and it says LGBT community over her, LGBTQ community. The guy says gay libertarian, and then there's a hot guy walking away, and it says guns and weed.
I love
And
it.
so shared it, and someone commented in one of things, well, of course, white men are known for doing this and everything like that. And I'm like, white men? Are you generalizing based on race? You, I am offended. First of all, no, because they said white men. I'm like, white gay men, sorry, white gay men. So I'm like, okay, so you're generalizing based on race, sex, and sexual orientation. So you are being racist, homophobic, and sexist. I'm
Yeah.
about to get woke. I go
Mhm.
in on them, and they commented a couple times and then eventually blocked me because every time they commented, I was like, "You bigot," and it's because when you turn it back around, the amount of frustration you can tell that's coming from them is just like amazing. And I sink to the level of trolling, but like I said, when I can tell that a discussion is not going to actually be productive,
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
idiot. I'm gonna have fun.
Yeah, no,
No.
it's always worthwhile to be to say things that the sooner you can get them to discredit themselves, the better. In a lot of ways, So like I like and I made a whole video about this statement because I found it so incredibly annoying from SJWs. And then I realized that this is the thing that I should just kind of go ahead and throw at them every time they are obviously totally brainwashed, because they think that you're brainwashed when they say this. This is their little way of leaning into a discussion with a horribly, patriarchal brainwashed person is what they're thinking. And the first thing they say, wow, lots to unpack here.
I just love that expression, but because it sounds so funny. Anyway.
Yeah, it's so absurd. Like it's like no, and it's like I know the exact root of the phrase. Like it came from a 1989 essay written by a white woman named Peggy McIntosh. It's called White Privilege Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, and it was like the sort of it ended up becoming canonized in feminist identity politics ever since, and that's where unpack came from.
I just thought it came from Family Guy, from Stu, when he says kind of like when Brian is doing something like, "Wow, lots to unpack here." That's actually what I heard her phrasing the first time.
Oh, so, it's a snide fucking West Coast fucking feminist fucking thing that's been around for a fucking long time.
Yeah.
No, Stewie's a sarcastic little character. That's his whole shtick. Like he was just being a little cunt. Like that's funny. I didn't even know he said that.
So Prince, I responded to that as well one time because, like I said, being a former somewhat more SJW, I'm used to all that terminology. So when I had a woman use that against me, once I actually woke the fuck up out of that craziness, I remember one of my first responses. I was like, "Oh, honey, it's not about what I gotta unpack, it's about what I'm packing." And she fucking went off. I was like, yeah. So it was, yeah. No, it's.
Well,
I remember the last time that almost got under my skin was this guy that I used to know from high school that I don't really like him actually. Like it's not that we were friends, but I went to this small alternative, like hippie progressive, like it was kind of like a proto SJW high school. But people weren't so crappy in the 90s, right? And also I was gay, and being gay in the 90s, you were considered oppressed. Like you were as oppressed as a trans person now. So we had these all school meetings, or it wasn't all school, but it was open to everyone in the school, and it was once a week, and I would always go to them. I don't know. There were. It was cool to talk with the teachers and the students about, and we'd come up for like, what are the best ways to punish students that get caught smoking on school grounds? Like you were supposed to officially leave school grounds if you were going to smoke. And just like these like kind of like semi-trivial but actually substantive decisions that we would come to as an actual like community or whatever. And this guy would always be in those meetings, like always. And he was there every week. So I was almost always there, and I would chair them. For me, it was like, I was sort of into the educational experience, and I guess for him too. But the thing is that he wasn't particularly smart. He thought that he was, but he wasn't really. And he was a straight guy who is significantly older than me. He was probably technically a junior or a senior, but he never, I swear to God, was still going there when I was a senior. Like because that happens a lot at that school. Kids don't graduate. They just sort of stay there forever. And so he would just be kind of irritating, and like Mr. Straight guy who thinks he's a lot smarter than he is, and thinks he's, he probably was a male feminist in high school, but I don't even remember. And I somehow encountered him again in adult life. Okay, it was during the 2016 presidential primary election. So we're probably talking about like that was when, you know, Milo Yiannopoulos was first going on tour and Milo Yiannopoulos was making fun of third wave feminism and blah 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 blah. And so this guy who I wasn't friends with on Facebook, like I didn't like him. This other guy that we knew in common, this guy, the uncool guy, wrote as a status update, why is it that MRAs and stuff always criticize third wave feminism so much? Because blah blah blah. He says something about third wave feminism, and I don't remember what the question was exactly. And this guy that we went to high school with tagged me in it and said, you should ask Prince. Prince has been obsessed with this stuff recently. And so, of course, I go in there and I'm like, well, it's not even really third wave feminism that's the problem. It's fourth wave feminism that is like what we're actually dealing with right now. And the guy is like, well, why is it for? I'm like, well, I'll tell you exactly why. It's blog and social media driven feminism. And that's how they can get people fired with like Twitter hate mobs. They couldn't do that in the 90s. And so it developed into this like long conversation, and like some of his other friends were like sort of asking questions, but they were mostly like interested in hearing what I had to say, and it wasn't actually hostile at all. He thought that he was going to be able to outmaneuver me, but it was like, yeah, it's going to be like in high school. I'm smarter than you, dumbass. And then so it went on and it went on and it went on, and you know, there was at least like 30-40 long posts, and then he actually said, lots to unpack here. And I said, hey, I'm unpacking you. And that was the last time I was kind of annoyed, except for I think that it was self-evident that I really was, you know, like I was actually.
So I imagine if you told him you were about to pack him. Anyway. Sorry.
Well, when it comes to like male feminists nowadays, the only thing that comes to mind is kind of like, well, we all heard about Freud's penis envy. I'm just thinking about, okay, this is clits envy, more or less.
Okay, so that's just a whole. I think even Freud would take a moment with that one. But
Yeah.
So
by the way, for all the English speakers on in chat, it's pronounced Freud, not Freud. Freud.
Oh, really? Freud.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I do want to divert us quick to like the chat, because I noticed people have been having all kinds of discussions, and Prince, this was like almost a year ago where I brought this up, but I actually want Berserker Europe take on this as well, because I was thinking about doing a video on this. So someone actually did mention, when two men are in a relationship, is the dynamic similar to male-female type relationship, or is there a better dynamic? Now, what's interesting for me, and I if I could just mention mine, and I do want both your inputs. So for me personally, and this I always find interesting, is the feminine and the masculine. The left freaks out about this now, about saying that the feminine and the masculine complement each other. Now, because a lot of people then point to same-sex couples saying, see, the masculine, the feminine, and the feminine. But personally, how I look at it as, even in same-sex relationships, the feminine and the masculine traits that we consider feminine and masculine according to our cultures still complement each other. The characteristics, and what I mean by that is, for example, even two fairly masculine-looking presenting men, one can usually be more nurturing. One may be more home-focused, while the other is more work-focused. So one may have more, like, just traditionally what's considered feminine attributes, feminine interests, and this can be even in heterosexual couples reversed, with a man presenting more that and a woman presenting that. So I actually think that in many cases, now mind you, this is just, obviously this is anecdotal, this is my personal opinion, that the feminine and masculine complement each other, not just in heterosexual couples, but also in homosexual couples. What would be your guys' take on that?
Yeah, sure, why not? To a certain degree. I would say that you should.
One actually folds on, acts like a woman. I'm not saying.
Yeah, no. I think that things do end up that way. Like, I think of like the good relationships that I've had with gay men, who, granted, they weren't guys that were like actually my boyfriends, because if I had a really good relationship with a boyfriend, maybe I'd still be with him. But no, I had this one friend who, you know, it was kind of like we were boyfriends for a number of years, and there was sort of like I would have been more of the masculine energy of the two of us, and it naturally ended up that way, and we balanced each other out in that way. And it was this weird thing where, like, if I was having issues, like, we would go on these trips to like cabins or whatever, and we would have a whole bunch of fun and get wasted. This is one night in particular that I'm thinking of, and I had told everyone, you know, like, we're going to go on this walk I think we were going on a walk to the woods. And I said I was going to go, and they're like, well, you don't have to go. And I'm like, no, I'm going on, you know? And so I'm like, make sure to wake me up, 'cause I want to go. And they're like, yeah, but you're really wasted. And like, I just have this, we know you don't get up. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to. So, And so I was like really insistent upon it. And so they did, and they made me go, and they put me in this car, and it was like a 25-minute drive through like a windy mountain road, you know? And then we get out of the car, and immediately I run, like I dash like 20 feet and just start puking. It's like as soon as we get out of the car. And my friend, he I puked like one or two more times on that walk. Like, it was like this thing where I apparently had a lot of puking to do. And they were like coming to see if I was all right, and he would just quietly be like, no, he's fine. He just don't even bother with him. I got him. And you know, it was like clear that he was sort of like the woman in the thing, and he would act like that. That was not the only time that he acted like that. And that was why we were able to be such good friends, was because of that thing about us. So yeah, sure.
Well, like, one thing, for example, I want to mention specifically is, like, for example, just little things. All right. So my husband, like, for one example, I can tell that my husband loves to, it's not a judgment. It's a turn on. My husband loves to be the protective one. He loves to be, you know, to make me feel safe. And I know how to defend myself, but I love that's important to him. It's more important. It's less important to me to be perceived as the more protective and the more, you know, physically strong one. It's less important to me than I can tell it is to him. And I don't mean that as an insult towards him. I can just tell that it's important to him. And I actually find that attractive, that he wants to be the protector. When we get groceries, the car, my husband loves being the one to grab the most groceries. I can tell, like, he actually will grab them from my hand and stuff. Or from when I'm going for him. And I can tell that he likes that. So letting him have that, I don't know. I find that an attractive trait. He likes, so when I first met my husband, every time he'd take my hand, he'd kiss it. And, you know, and everything like that. And I tell women about the way my husband was towards me, and they'd be like, I'm freaking jealous, because these more traditional masculine male behaviors was what my husband expressed, and it was important to him that he expressed them, but it wasn't important to me necessarily to be the one to claim them. I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly. I don't perceive myself necessarily taking on a woman's role, but I let him have that because I found it to be a turn on that he wanted to express that. I don't know if that makes sense, but to me, that's part of the balance I'm talking about. How do you feel, Berserker, about that? I know.
Well, I mean, since I come from a very different place, I mean, first of all, in Europe, we don't really have this kind of like traits when it comes to like perceived masculine behavior or feminine behavior in the same way. I mean, for instance, European men are infamous for being a lot more vain than Americans are. So, but yeah, I kind of get what you're getting at. And sure, I mean, but that's also because, I mean, if I take it personally, it's kind of like, okay, one is masculine-ish and one is feminine-ish, but it also has to do a lot when it comes to, sometimes I am actually kind of more like the masculine one or more the feminine one. It shifts, really. It doesn't really.
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't really. I don't really think that it does really apply to gay couples in general. To actually quote, the Ellen DeGeneres on this, I mean, it's like asking two chopsticks. I mean, who's the man, who's the woman in this case? It really
Yeah,
depends.
who's the fork? Yeah, asking two
Hmm.
chopsticks, who's the fork? Yeah. No, I agree. So
Yeah.
I guess maybe then it's a cultural thing because what I'm discussing is actions that we have come culturally, and I'm speaking from American perspective, of course, to
Well, of
associate
course.
with femininity and masculinity, with the man and with the woman. But that's just because we've come to it. These actions aren't in and of themselves feminine or masculine necessarily. It's just culturally we've come to see them in this way.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it's just a matter, like, for example, being a breadwinner is very important because it's funny because I've known same-sex couples where there's a struggle over one feels like less if they're not the breadwinner, because especially among gay men, because men feeling that they need to be the breadwinner, that they need to bring home the bacon. If two men are feeling that way in a relationship, and there's going to be a struggle over who is actually the breadwinner, kind of thing. To me,
Speaking
that's
about
not
rimming.
I know, right? Well,
Yeah.
to me, that's not an important thing. So I don't care if my husband makes more money than me. I don't care if I make more money than him. As long as we're getting by, that's what matters. But some people associate the breadwinner with a masculine role, with the man role, and the other
Yeah, yeah,
way.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So
Sure,
yeah.
sure, 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 sure.
Oh, I'm sorry, sorry.
Hammer, the liberal hammer. This whole discussion, which one of y'all's the man? It gets a little repetitive, and it also borders on gender role discussion. So, I think that we can move on to a new topic for this stream
Well, I can
for the
well
audience.
I can just say I can just finish up with one real fun thing. Well, um, most often I'm not sure if this applies to you, Hammer, but I mean, sure, we might be perceived as the more delicate one or whatever, but we're not the ones who are biting the pillow, so to say. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
but I do agree with Prince. Moving on. So, what about recent? Do we want move on to like politics, because we've had a lot of interesting stuff going on politically.
Oh
Yeah, yeah.
God. Here in Sweden, it's been chaotic. I mean, we still don't have a government here. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Essentially,
Let's hear
it's
about that because I don't quite understand. You were
Yeah.
sort of explaining that, I think before you went on air, but I don't know
yeah.
the deal. So explain it to me.
Yeah, it's kind of like this. We have a parliamentary system, unlike in the US. We don't really have a two-party system ish. So basically, we have the alliance, which are kind of like the right wing, which I'm a part of. I'm a Christian Democrat, as probably some viewers already know, which is kind of conservative ish. And here's the thing. Well, the left lost, quite a big deal, and they lost to the Swedish Democrats. But every single party has been kind of like one of the regular established parties, apart from Christian Democrats, has really been like, oh, we're not going to cooperate with Sweden Democrats, etc. Yada yada yada. So what it has started to become is that it has been a stalemate, more or less. It's become like a
Mm,
Mexican. What's it called?
standoff, Mexican standoff,
Thank you.
cultural
So
appropriation. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Well, we eat tacos at Fridays normally here in Sweden, so come on. Um, yeah. So, anyways, what it has led to is actually that the left is trying to smear the right and saying that, oh, look at them, they're trying to cooperate with the Swedish Democrats, even though that there is actually has been no signs of it really. And I mean, that's kind of the really hot potato that everyone's tossing around here is basically the Sweden Democrats, because no one wants to
Mm,
cooperate with them because political correctness reasons. Even though it would actually benefit perhaps some of the things that they would actually cooperate with them, no one wants to cooperate with them because they're supposedly racist. And yeah, so basically we haven't had a government for like almost 2 months now. So
yeah.
yeah, that's
Well,
kind of
I
interesting.
I
So
do
so
want to.
wait, so
I'm
so
sorry.
there. Can I ask you just real quick? Would it be sort of as if they're trying to halt the government the way that they would be doing in the United States if the Democrats could get their crap together and halt the Trump administration. Trump has actually managed to get a number of things done, but would it be similar to that?
I would actually more compare it to like when Obama tries to convince the oh, what's it called? The senators and everything.
Mhm.
And to actually enforce the Obamacare, for instance, it's more like that. It's become a stalemate because no side wants to actually try to negotiate with one another.
Mm.
So the left, the left has done now is actually trying to open up with a coalition government, which means that the right and the left would actually be sitting in the same government. But of course, with the left being the prime minister and everything really important. So yeah, and of course the right is not going to actually accept this, thank God. um and yeah, so it's been a really complicated situation, and when it comes to like the left here, they have been kind of like, well, at least we're not going to cooperate with Nazis. um yeah, and what was real fun was actually the environmentalist party, which is kind of like, think of if Berkeley environmentalist hippies would actually create their own party. They have been really proud in media, being like, "Well, now we're going to show that what was it? Now we're going to show that 95.5% of the Swedish population didn't vote for the Swedish Democrat." And the journalist, and this was from leftist media, actually pointed out, well, they also didn't really vote for your party as well. So it's been kind of like, yeah,
So I have a
well,
question, kind of just like an understanding of this, because I recently was researching political demographics in different countries, in
yeah,
developed countries, and Sweden came up, and
mhm,
the most recent like elections and everything came up, and so they mentioned the Christian Democrats and how
yeah,
they had larger gains, but this last election the percentage gains weren't as big as they thought they were going to be, so that created a little bit more contributed to that conflict because they didn't get quite as much gain as they thought. And that's what's kind of resulted in the stalemate a little bit. And from what I understand, a lot of this is driven due to immigration
yeah, sort of. I
disputes.
mean, when it comes to like the Christian Democrats, for instance, they actually had their best election in decades. So yeah,
Mm.
they shouldn't really complain. They're actually
No, they
bigger
had
than the
gains. I've heard they
environmentalist
had
party.
gains, but it wasn't to
Yeah.
the percentage they thought. But
Oh,
is the immigration really what's driving that
yeah,
as
it
much?
is. It is. Yeah, I mean, if you really put it down, yeah, it is about the immigration issues, and mainly because I mean the Swedish population has had enough, more or less. I mean, it's actually, if you take my closest city, which is Växjö, we actually had one of the most controversial things here in Sweden that actually became a really hot potato, as we would say in Swedish. It was Muslims could actually have their prayer calling out, and it was actually considered okay, sure, you can have that, and that was really a hot potato. So the Sweden Democrats, the Christian Democrats, the moderates, etc., um, they actually went out in this election promising that they will forbid anything like this because it doesn't really correlate with Swedish values with secularism. And so, yeah, it really became a hot potato, but not the immigrants themselves. It's rather the second and third generation immigrants that are actually making problems for the rest of them. So,
Mm.
yeah, you can actually think of it like this. I hate to actually compare to the black community in the United States, but you can think about it like this. If if the first generation are of immigrants are kind of like Martin Luther King style activists, now, the second and third generation immigrants are Black Lives Matter on steroids.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of how you can compare it.
Yeah, and I think that's been reflected a lot throughout Europe. I mean, we've had that a little bit here in America, but I think that's been like a big reflection when I read up, for example, in Britain, some of the terrorist attacks that were that were carried out, they were by the children of immigrants, not by the immigrants
Yes,
themselves.
exactly. And I mean,
So,
and if we not take, for instance, the recent, if we take for instance, when it comes to this, basically what Americans, and I'm sorry that I'm condescending Americans here. It's not really. It's just so I'm referring to the New World specifically here. Um, I mean, European cultures and civilizations is way, way, way older than the United States. So we already have an established core culture, so to say, and hence why this becomes a problem because our cultures has already developed, and it's really that we Europeans in general, ethnic Europeans, or at least people who are actually born in Europe and are really grateful for the European system and Western civilization, has actually become really tired of this whole discussion that, okay, why are we giving so many affirmative action things to people who doesn't really want to use it for anything constructive? So it basically become this kind of debate. And when it comes to immigration itself, well, see, here's the thing: we all heard in the news throughout Europe and the Americas, of course, that Hungary, for instance, is one of the worst countries for immigrants. They're real racist. See, there is economy to it as well because having a lot of immigrants um, in Europe costs a lot of money, and we don't really have that much money. And especially not the ones who are from former communist states, they do not have an economy at all, more or less. If you compare it, like from countries like Sweden, the UK, France, Germany, etc., they don't really have this huge money bag that they can just hand out to people. So that's has become a problem. But the EU tries to actually force the Soros narrative, even though I don't really know much about Soros, but they tried to actually make a Soros kind of deal, and that's actually what made a lot of Europeans, and particularly from Eastern Europe and former communist states, to be real like fuck you. So that's it when it comes to immigration and immigrants. Because I mean, when it comes to minorities in Europe, we have so many. That's something that particularly the left in the United States really needs to just get. We have a lot of minorities. We have a lot of uh, races or whatever you call it. Even though perhaps we have the same skin color, we still consider them as races ish. Like
Oh no,
yeah,
you met my husband. I was like, "There's a Polak if I've ever seen one." No, just.
yeah. So I mean, it's kind of, yeah. So I mean, it's more complicated than perhaps what people might think, especially on the left in the United States. And no, it isn't a rise in alt-right nationalism. It's purely a rise in critical thinking when it comes to immigration, and they're seeing like old traditions and cultures and customs eroding away for something that is completely new.
Well,
Hmm.
so question: would you say this is true about the Western culture in general, especially leftist Western culture? Let me be specific.
Just before you ask the question, I wanna just
Okay.
try to gear it towards more general Western leftist culture. A little bit less about specifics of Sweden because that
Yeah,
I
no,
because
No,
I because yeah yeah yeah
I'm talking about the Europe in general here. So and the
yeah,
Western
yeah, yeah,
cultures
yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
general.
No, that's fine.
So
I'm saying from now on, let's
yeah.
try to
yeah,
gear it
cool.
more towards because I just know that when we get towards talking about Sweden and in particular, there's so much to say, and it's great when you elaborate on that. But let's try to have a little bit more of a universal stuff
Yeah.
for all of the audience. So
Well, my question is to
Yeah.
Western culture in general, not so
Hmm.
this includes America. So, because I know the American perspective on this in from all angles,
Hmm.
is the idea that it's only Westernized cultures where you have a growing group of people that actually celebrate losing their culture. Nowhere
Yeah.
do you see that else in the world. You don't see that in the Middle East. You don't see that in parts of Africa. You don't see them actually celebrating the loss of their culture. It's in westernized or like the loss, to the extent like west. I'm trying to think the best way of wording it. I had it in my head and then I lost it. But for
Hmm.
example, the foundations of their culture. Let me put it that
Hmm.
way. They're celebrating the losing of the foundations of their culture. In the West, it's Westernized cultures. There's become this celebration of the losing of it, of the shedding off from it.
Well, and I wouldn't.
Yeah.
In the United States, I wouldn't even say it's just the foundations of it. It's they're blatantly. I mean, with in terms of white American culture, they try to pretend that it doesn't even exist, which is the dumbest thing ever. It's like, oh, okay,
It truly does.
it's like, yeah, obviously it does. But what's embarrassing about that is that they've been okay. So the culture that surrounds you, that is the dominant culture, is going to be all of the individual things that you take for granted, and you don't necessarily stop to think, do they have this everywhere else? And so the best example of what is white American culture. Okay, well, I mean, we have apple pie, we have like some other, like southern food, like obviously, blah 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 blah. But B, there's root beer. Did you know that they don't even have root beer in England? Like not even in
I know
England.
it tastes
And
horrible, by the way.
oh, it's awesome. Root beer is awesome, but you have to be you have to be raised with it. It's supposed to be like people say it tastes like a little bit like licorice soda or something, and
No, okay.
but no, but like okay, there's like country and folk music, which is actually what we call rock. What we call rock and roll now sounds a lot more like a cross between like country, folk, and like something new that happened in the 60s and 70s. It doesn't have much to do with like the original rock and roll like Chuck Berry stuff. It doesn't sound very much like that at all, or even Elvis. And so like there's so much white. Oh, and then like musicals, like American musicals, things like My Fair Lady and crap. Like try asking an 85-year-old woman who lives in Argentina if there's no American culture. She'd be like, what are you talking about? My favorite movie is My Fair Lady. And she'd be mad because she's like, that's absurd. And but there's these SJWs have been brainwashed because of the fact that they take it for granted. They do believe that maybe there is no American culture because they've never stopped to consider that well, what don't they have other places? Like what is unique to America? Because the Broadway musical, they don't have Broadway in other countries. There's no that's not a thing.
I mean,
and then so yeah, it gets really annoying. You get that whole like white people don't have culture. That was a thing invented by black supremacists.
They actually tried that narrative here. It didn't really work so well. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was that came from the blacks. Like, okay, the black supremacists had their little like lists of talking points that they had probably invented in the 1970s. And it was this like way of attacking all capitalism and American culture. And they were the ones who kind of came up with that one. And it's so dumb. Like, and it basically that was the like that's basically the we was Kangs, white people stole everything. And then it just multiplied and multiplied. And so it's like, oh, well, rock and roll music, despite the fact that it's all white guys and it sounds totally different than black music, actually you stole it from us because apparently Elvis Presley imitated Chuck Berry back in the 50s. And it's like, yeah, but okay, what we call rock now, first of all, nobody calls it rock and roll. Second of all, it's all just guitar music is what you actually mean. And I'm pretty sure white people invented guitars.
Yeah,
white
guitar is actually a Spanish invention, so yeah, white people.
Yeah, so shut up. So yeah,
I do find that funny though, because at least I understand they have a little bit more, not really a ton, but they have a little bit of that wiggle room where they, at least here in America, with saying that there's no like there's no like the white culture is the American culture kind of thing, even though many would say that white culture is the American culture. But regardless, to try to make that
it's a mix.
I know it's a mix.
Yeah, and
so
see
here a little bit more, but to try to make it in a place like Sweden, like where you're from, Berserker, that to me just sounds absolutely crazy. I mean, like to try to say there's no white culture in Sweden in Europe.
Really? Just think of the Vikings and the fact that we're actually burning up stuff whenever there's a celebration and being really crypto-pagan. But I mean, but when it comes to like the Western core, I mean, and when it comes to the left, especially, what they're trying to do here is actually trying to say that, well, immigrants made Sweden great, etc. And we're kind of like, no, not so much. I mean, sure thing, we had a lot of French influence in the 17th century, but I mean, come on, that was throughout the whole of Europe, and it wasn't really exactly immigrants from France that actually did all the doing. It was our kings or emperors or empresses or queens that actually tried to actually emulate the French. So I mean, it to try to actually answer your question, it really depends on where you are in Europe, for instance, or
Mhm.
where you are in the US, I imagine. But when it comes to like the left trying to actually say or actually celebrate the loss of our cultures, yeah, they're trying to do that. But here it's actually more loosely based on perspectives that they believe that if you do celebrate your heritage, that for instance in my case, being a purebred Swede and being have this really long history and about Vikings, etc., that you're a Nazi. They're actually trying to actually push that narrative on you that, oh, but if you celebrate your Scandinavian heritage, then you're a Nazi.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think you
Mm,
talked about the way that the SJW culture, which like ultimately largely stemmed from the West Coast, Berkeley,
yeah.
intersectional feminists who drew from the traditions of the Black supremacists and the women's libbers, who they made it into its own little intellectual movement, starting in the late '80s in academia, and then it came back with a vengeance in the second half of Obama's thing. Well, that
Mhm.
that ended up that they tried to push their little narrative, which was like this kooky, stupid narrative,
Mhm.
literally everywhere. They projected what they believed European males did to the entire world. They started actually doing to the entire world culturally,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, no, you're just saying things that was just a little piece of like
I actually have
a black supremacist talking point, and now it's infecting Sweden. So
um Prince and Hammer. I actually got a message from Feral J Cat. He
uh,
actually wonders if he could join us, perhaps.
of course, yeah, have him on.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Just a moment.
And then there's a
Okay.
question in the chat that I want to throw at Berserker. I know we kind of wanted to generalize, but this I'm curious about because I hadn't heard of this.
Mm-hmm.
It says, ask the Swedish guy about the melting of Viking artifacts by an immigrant who was appointed to a position of power. It seemed pretty scandalous. Uh,
Yeah.
I hadn't actually. When did was? I mean,
Well, see, here's the trouble when it comes to this. Sure, I know what he's talking about. And here's the thing. Just one moment. Okay, there we go. When it comes to all of this, you have to understand this is kind of over exaggerated because I mean, when it comes to artifacts from the Viking Age, come on, we have tons of them. It's kind of like, yeah, we found a nail, a doornail
Mm.
from 800 AD, and it's kind of like, yeah, yeah, wow, yeah, toss them in the other millions of artifacts. It's kind of like that. Um, so I mean, sure, I get what he's saying, and yes, I do agree. To some point, yes, but most of what they're actually been melting down and actually destroying is kind of like everyday items that it's not really it has no historical significance anyway. But
You
yeah,
mean
I do
like
not I
keeping
don't
someone's toothbrush from 100 years ago?
yeah, actually. So I
Okay.
mean it's kind of like yeah, it's just really overexaggerated, but yes, I don't like it at all that it's this guy is actually trying to actually promote to actually destroying more artifacts because of reasons that's unknown to me. But oh, by the way, liberal, could you perhaps wait a minute. Um, just so basically, when it comes to this guy, I mean, he's really capable of his job. I'm sure. I mean, otherwise he wouldn't have gotten his job. But I'm not really to try to give a short answer. Yes, I find it disgusting that they're melting down artifacts, but that's because I'm a history nerd. But I don't find it really offensive that they're doing it because I understand perfectly. I mean, it would be kind of like if you go into Greece, for instance. Literally, you can't really dig a hole in the ground without finding an artifact. It's kind of like the same situation
Mhm.
in the greater cities. So it's kind of like, yeah. whatever.
So they're not he's not doing it because he hates Swedish heritage or history or culture. It's
No.
doing it because there's so much of it and this stuff is useless. Like I said, it would be like comparing, there would be like a constitutional document compared to a toothbrush from the same era. Clearly,
Yeah,
the toothbrush
exactly.
really yeah. Okay.
Huh.
Exactly.
Well, I had somebody said something very interesting in my chat, because and sorry, not in my chat, underneath one of my videos about tearing down monuments and melting monuments or whatever, because
Now, that I find really odd when it comes to the United States. Why on earth are you trying to actually destroy something that's really culturally significant, or it's kind of like a romantic point of view? I mean, if you think
well,
about
I can tell you why. And no, I know this is a way better explanation, and it hadn't occurred to me, but this probably is it. This is probably it. So here's the thing: everybody knows that okay, so the Confederates, I don't wait. Okay, so the Republican Party was the party of Abraham Lincoln, who was actually he was the guy who's credited as freeing the slaves, right? He was the first president that after the Civil War, and people say Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, was a Republican. So it was Democrats who were all of these Confederacy generals and things like that. Those are who the statues they have are. And then as soon as the Civil War was over, they started funding the KKK to terrorize people who were trying to. And so they don't want that. The people who want to tear this stuff down is the Democrats themselves, because they are embarrassed about their own party and they don't want people to know about themselves.
I mean, the interesting thing is like, obviously, because they're referencing the problem is obviously looking at this from the modern lens, right? Because I mean, there are the overt racist and like people who are absolutely questionable and like when we in the past, of course, but then it's just also looking at, like, there's been a lot of issues with even George Washington, of course, because Washington was a slave owner, just like pretty much any man of his status during the time in America. And the thing that I have is, and this I actually pissed someone off, is because they were talking about it, and I'm like, yes, but this is because we're looking at things from through a modern lens. I was like, for example, Martin Luther King, someone who I very much respect, at least in regards to his message and what he the changes that he brought forth in America. But if you look at it, for example, like on the topic of homosexuality, there is an incident, like there was a huge argument over, because his niece came out when same-sex marriage passed. Martin Luther King's niece came out saying that her uncle would have found it to be an abomination and would have been disgusted by it. Then his wife came out, and like a lot of other people came out saying, no, this is what he would have thought. We don't know what he would have thought, but we do know a few things. We know that back in that time, a young man wrote him a letter, a young boy did, asking Martin Luther King, talking to him about his homosexual feelings. And Martin Luther King advised him to try to suppress them. That was the thing. But on the other hand, Bayard Rustin was Martin Luther King's second, right-hand man. He helped with the organization. He actually helped Martin Luther King stay more on a peaceful path. But then Martin Luther King then distanced himself from Bayard Rustin, because Bayard Rustin during that time, well, he was Black, but he was also gay. He was with a white man, and he was a communist. So it was a very straight. There were a lot of like risks there that were associated with that. But the point is that Martin Luther King suggested to this young man that he suppress who he is. Now, if I just look at that from my perspective, from a 2018 perspective, I'm going to have a certain way of looking at Martin Luther King. But does that mean I should disregard everything that I've come to respect about him? Also, it's a lot of questions about how faithful Martin Luther King was to his wife. That's but so this is the problem that we have, is that I feel like on the left there is this inability to do that, to separate what you can respect from someone, historically speaking, and the bad, because you have to accept both, but you can lift the one above the other and respect that without just ignoring the other.
they actually did try to actually make this kind of action when it comes to Sweden as well, because we had a real controversial king. His name was Carl the 12th. He actually made the Swedish economy just go bankrupt in the 1700s, and he was kind of he's seen from the Nazis as a hero, national, more or less. Um, the thing is, the left actually tried to actually wanted to make a point to actually destroy his statue, and this was really unheard of because in school we're actually taught about this king, and we are taught both sides that okay, he was a conqueror and tried to actually make honors for Sweden, but we also hearing at the same time that okay, he also bankrupted the entire nation, which the nation didn't really um, get over until like 100 years later, more or less. So we're actually taught both sides of the arguments. But what the left was trying to do is more or less like, oh, but he is a symbol for the colonialism, etc., and the oppression of Baltic peoples and Finnish people, etc. While the Baltics and Finnish people were kind of like, no, we actually kind of liked him. He actually incorporated us, so we became full equal citizens in the Swedish Empire. So it was kind of like, oh shit, the leftist narrative didn't really work so well here. So yeah, and in the Baltics, it's actually kind of seen as a hero for being defended against Russians. So yeah, I
Did you
mean,
sorry? Did you guys send the link to Farrell?
yeah, I guess it's having kind of like technical issues. I'm not sure.
Wait,
Is
let me send the most recent link that you sent me, because Prince, you actually sent me 2 links.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah,
because sometimes Twitter has been fucking with me. I don't think that he knows that I have this feeling that he doesn't realize that he has me blocked on Twitter. I have this just maybe he hates me and he's coming on the live stream on my channel. But he has me blocked on Twitter for some reason.
Drama sells. Let's get drama. No.
Maybe he hates me for this mysterious fight that we never got into. Or maybe it's just Twitter messing with me because they kind of have for about a year now. So
well, speaking of fights and stuff, okay, so I don't know how closely you follow it, Berserker, but I kind of wanted to throw it out there with Prince. What tiers do you think are gonna be just flooding on the 7th? Red tiers or blue tiers? Like, I mean, what do we think is gonna happen? I mean, what are you feeling where you are? I know what I'm feeling here in New York State.
well, I mean, I don't really understand. Well, sure, I was taught that we actually was taught something about American systems in general at school. So, from what I understand, I just hope it becomes a stalemate. Really, I really hope so. I mean, because I don't think it's a really good idea to actually have double Republican or double Democrat, so to say. I think there actually needs to be some kind of balance. So yeah,
Well,
but if I would have to choose anyone, I would actually hope that the Republicans would win. I really hope so.
the problem is with the balance thing, from my perspective with that, and I used to believe that as well, is that it's not about balance anymore, because now what used to be called balance was when people actually talked and reached across the aisle. Now it's just stagnation. We don't move further. It actually damages our country. So balance was great when it actually was balance and there was communication. Now balance is a stalemate that stalls our country. And I'm going to say one more thing, and I do want Prince to take on to that because I want to know if he agrees with me here. As much as I never thought I'd say this in my life, I really didn't, because I'm a lifelong Democrat, identify as a liberal, but I do hope, and I like I said, I feel weird saying this, so it takes me a moment. I honestly think it would be beneficial for the Democrats to lose, because maybe they'd get their shit together, drop this democratic socialist shit, get rid of the identity politics, freaking SJW leftist bullshit, and return to the traditional liberal and democratic values.
yeah, I do absolutely agree with that. In fact, and I'm echoing a little bit. Take care of that. So I absolutely do agree with that. And the thing is that I think I can say it more simply. The Democrats need to lose. We do not negotiate with terrorists.
Well, when it comes to all of this,
Agreed.
yeah, but when it comes to all of this, especially when it comes to, I mean, the United States in general, what I actually believe what the left really needs is actually a lesson in what really communism does to a society. I really need that every single fucking socialist in the United States really needs to go to Eastern Europe, to Moldavia, for instance, which is the last communist state in Europe, to actually see what's over there. That's what I really think, and I actually
Well, that's
believe
what
that
we
they
need to
should be
do.
taught.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
mean, but
We need
we
to
had
raise money
pretty.
for a field trip. We
Yeah,
need
yeah,
to raise money for a
that
field trip.
that's true. But
Yeah.
we also did have hopefully the closest thing that we're ever going to get to a communist president, which was Barack Obama, who was an affirmative action hire who was completely underqualified and economic. Like it just took me now to actually look at the national debt graph of his administration, and it's like this night and day difference. Like this guy goes into office and then like it's like pew up, and it does not slow down at all ever. And I put it in my last video, and it's so blatant. It's like, okay, George W. Bush wasn't like any sort of good president or anything. He started this war that wasted money and blah 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 blah, but even that did not raise the debt like Obama was.
I don't know. A lot of people would argue that FDR was a truly socialist communist president.
I would actually say that. I would actually say that the most communist. You don't even have any good communist presidents or administrations.
That's a
You
good
do.
thing,
I
though. I
mean,
think that's a good thing that
yeah,
we don't have any straight up.
it's a real good thing. But when it comes to one thing, I would really like that Republicans, especially the fanatic ones, would just stop screaming communist, socialist, etc. when they probably don't know what exactly that is. Sometimes, I mean, I've been to countries which actually still bears literally the scars of communism. Like in Estonia, for instance, I could see monuments of Lenin. In Latvia, I could see that as well. In the Czech Republic, I actually saw a huge stadium dedicated to communist propaganda, which actually bankrupted that entire nation, but was only made possible because the Soviet Union actually pitched in a little bit of rubles. So I mean, and we've seen, and I've seen so many memorial monuments. I mean, if you take in the Czech Republic, for instance, the Jan Palach incident, when he actually set himself on fire in protest for the Russian takeover from the Prague Spring, etc. So I mean, I really believe that what the left, especially like those little fucking brats on the left in the United States, what they really should do, they should go to the Czech Republic, they should go to Poland, they should go to any of the former satellite states, and actually just listen to what the old people said or experienced during that time. I mean, I actually know a lot of people who actually fled from communist regimes. And let me tell you, it ain't pretty. I mean, Venezuela was a breeze compared to this.
Well, I can say this. I had one advantage. When I was in high school, I had a teacher that I loved. He was an economics teacher.
Hmm.
Went on to teach college after, and he actually escaped from a communist country. I forget specifically where
Yeah.
he was. He was teaching from the perspective economics. He was teaching economics and politics in my school from the perspective of someone who had lived and was raised in communism, under communism.
Hmm.
The way he taught us, the way he would address it, he always inserted it. He said, "Do you appreciate this?" I remember one question he asked us, and he asked to all of us. He goes, "Just question for you guys." And he goes, if there was the Klan, if a hate group wanted to register to have a march in this town,
Hmm.
or this other group, whatever group you don't like, if they registered to have this march in this town, and for me, he asked about the Klan, and stuff like that. Would you support their right to do that? And me, he was aware of it because I had mentioned the Klan before and my perspective on it. So I
Hmm.
think that's he proposed that question to me specifically, and I was like, as much as I am disgusted by their rhetoric, absolutely, I'd support their right to march because if I justify oppressing their freedom of speech, eventually, someone would one day justify oppressing mine. And this is what he taught us. And when it comes to the end of the day, you cannot call yourself a supporter of freedom of speech unless you're willing to fight for speech you don't agree with.
Hmm. See, here's a problem when it comes to one thing. I actually have one really good sentence I can just throw at the American left. Communism and socialism does not mean like the community get-togethers. It's not that, oh, let's take and repair this park, this playground. That's not communism. That's charity. Communism is when you're forced to do something that you clearly are not meant to do. And in communism, you don't have a choice in in what field you work in, where you live, the colors of your car. Even you don't have a choice because everyone is equal. And equality doesn't mean everyone is having a lavish lifestyle, equally lavish lifestyle. It actually means that everyone is equally poor. And that's the thing that American left really needs to just shut up because they don't know what they're talking about. They believe they do because, oh, well, it wasn't real communism in Soviet Russia. It wasn't real communism in China. It's not real communism in Cuba. Well, let me tell you something. The best example of communism I can find everywhere in the world is actually right on your doorstep, Cuba. That's actually the best example I have of communism nowadays. And people are saying like, "Oh, but Cuba is so nice." Yeah, just look at their cars. Just look how slow the government is at everything, and how repressive it is. And that actually Che Guevara, and I'm sorry for you leftist fuck ups who are gay. I'm sorry. This is to you. Che Guevara actually tried to take every single gay person and throw them in a cage and drown them at sea. I'm sorry.
Well, he also had concentration camps for them because
Yeah.
he made use of them.
Exactly. So, and communism and Nazism is exactly the same ideology. I mean, they're both called socialism at some point.
Yeah.
So, really, if you're really against Nazis, then you're a Republican. If you really like socialism in a dictatorship, you really like the fringe Democratic Party.
So, quick question to throw out there now. So, who here thinks this question, and I forget his name, it's now blocking, but Brazil just had their election, and the winner of the election has been compared to Trump. So, what is the perspective on this one? Because this guy has made some interesting statements, all right, such as, imprisoning his opponents and, casting out all those who have certain specific views from the nation. He has his views on homosexuality, of course, just across the board. Like,
Okay.
yeah.
I think we will get to that, but I want to introduce our other panelist, Feral Cat. I'm not sure if you have talked to the Liberal Hammer before. I don't remember.
Look familiar.
Okay.
The beard.
So I mean, you've certainly seen each other.
Our beards have Bluetooth before. That's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I have to ask Feral, are you aware that you have me blocked on Twitter?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Let me check that. No, it's been a hellacious couple of weeks. Death in the family and all that stuff, so I've been drunk a lot of the time. Let's take a look.
Speaking of that, I'm going to make myself one more mixed drink. I'll be right back, boys. So,
no, I was joking with Berserker about he was talking about destroying artifacts, and I was looking around me and I'm like, yeah, basically going through all this is about like that. Old ladies like surround themselves with glittery stuff.
Yeah. No, but you do have me blocked on Twitter, and it was this very strange thing because so we have the Gaytriarchy group, and I believe that Bacon said that he was going to be out of town for a few weeks. Like I remember him saying that kind of, and then I would post and I'd be like, "Hey, are we going to do it this week?" And I had it this one week with and it was just me and this one guest, that young man who lives in Pennsylvania, who just started a channel. And then I had last week, I did a stream during the day with Chadwick Moore. And so I kind of didn't want to do it anyway. And I didn't hear back from anybody. So I'm like, okay. And then after that, probably on Monday or so,
How do you check that on here?
Well, you have to specifically I think that there's like a control panel setting and then it's blocked users or some crap like that. And yeah. So
Here, try it now.
okay. So the thing was is that I wasn't hearing from anybody, and I'm like, this is strange. Okay, yeah, no, it's now it shows up. Okay. So the thing is that I
If it helps, you didn't miss anything. Standard shit talking.
yeah, no worries, no worries. So I basically I didn't get a show together last week, and then it turned out that our cat's gay had been kicked out of the Gaytriarchy conversation group without his knowledge. He didn't know, and you don't seem to know that you have me blocked, and maybe you did block me. I don't know. But I sense
has an opinion of you.
At some point, I know at some point there was just a shit ton of messages coming in. And I'm like, I cannot deal with this right now.
Oh, okay.
Be right back. I have to actually poke some sticks into the fire. Be right back.
Okay. Well, if there was actually something, then yeah. Okay, that's understandable. So try to remember to unblock me. Okay, death in the family. I understand. So because I was wondering if it was a case of Jack Dorsey of Twitter re-engineering the Twitter mind games of the user and trying to attack people, because he's unfollowed me from people randomly, like people that I didn't want
don't
to.
Be silly. I haven't let Jack out of the basement.
yeah. So.
Alright, sorry. What? Go away.
What? It's fall. Pumpkin spice chloroform is a thing. So, what was going on about destruction of artifacts? Because that's where I got pulled in, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Or y'all past that?
Well, we went past it, but just a brief recap. Apparently, there was an individual in Sweden who was melting down, destroying artifacts, Viking artifacts, and like repurposing them or whatever. I wasn't really even aware of it. Berserker covered it briefly, and it turns out that the artifacts that were being destroyed are basically as important as like if we were to have a toothbrush from like 100 years ago or something. It's not like they were destroying historic documents that built the culture or something.
No, not really. I mean, oh well. I'm back, by the way. Sorry.
Just like, isn't that what museums are for?
Sorry?
Isn't that what museums are for?
Yeah.
Well, from the way Berserker made it sound, you can walk. You go for a day walk and find an artifact on the ground.
More or less.
No, just
I mean, I literally have like a runestone just about 300 feet away from me. So come on, we have this stuff everywhere here, and actually we have like King's Mounds not far away from here. We have, yeah.
Wait,
so
you
come on.
got a runestone about 300 feet from you?
Yeah.
All right, I've done a lot of online research for runestones. Isn't that usually where the save point is? You know, where you can respawn?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think that speaks more to like an American perspective, because I've noticed that when I've talked to people from other countries who have more, cultures that are actually ancient, they're like, well, we have so many artifacts. We have artifacts spanning thousands of years, but here in America, our artifacts, we're looking at things, what, for the most part, just a couple hundred years old. If anything, we get fascinated by the cultures that were here prior. But so to us, I think they're a bit more, we take them more to our heart. I think maybe a little bit, and like the smaller things, even we take even the smaller things closer to our heart. Like, I mean, for example, when a building that's like 200 years old, which there just was one, got torn down to make room for another building, a more modernized a complex, I was like, that's sad to me. But I'm also
well, actually, you have to realize something when it comes to Scandinavia in particular. I mean, thanks to Snorre Sturlason, he who wrote the Edda, more or less, we actually have a really good documented cases, and we actually can trace some of the families that are still existing, or their descendants are still existing. Exactly. So, I mean, that's why when it comes to like ancient monuments, etc., it's kind of like, yeah, sure. Yeah, that and
So you're like,
20,000 other more.
we have living artifacts as well. We have the descendants. You're like, we can
Yeah.
trace it.
We have Congress.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
it's
have
yeah, it's
Congress.
fossils, but still.
Yeah. But still, when it
Well,
comes
that's
to
fine.
all this, I literally have. I can trace back my family heritage for at least 500 years. For instance, at the same spot when my dad is coming from. When it comes to my mother's side, I can trace it back at least 300 years. So I mean, come on, it's not really that uncommon here to actually have a long family line, and we all know our family trees more or less. So we actually taught them mostly like children, at least here in the
Damn.
countryside. Yeah.
We're all mutts that have no idea what pound we were left at. Anyways, but
Yeah.
no,
Yeah,
Trace mine back to
basically.
1020.
yeah. So Phil, you made that comment though about basically kind of what you said to paraphrase. All of our best artifacts are currently in Congress. So to throw that question out there, who supports term limits when it comes to Congress here? I mean, here in my state, it's interesting because New York Republicans are basically moderate Democrats in many ways. It's interesting. We just had a gubernatorial debate, which of course Andrew Cuomo cowered out. You know, he was a coward and didn't show up to, and that's why the media wouldn't cover it, none of the news stations. But the Republican candidate Molinaro, and also the candidate I'm supporting, who's the Libertarian, Larry Sharp, and two others, the Green Party and I forget the other one, whatever it is, showed up, and it was interesting because Molinaro came across. I was like, he's definitely more interesting enough, more moderate compared to what we perceive a lot of Republicans. But so in regardless though to the Senate, there's a senator who's running against Kirsten Gillibrand, who's the state Senate, one of the representatives, one of the two senators from New York. She's up for re-election, and her name is Shell, the Republicans who is running against her. She is running on a platform of term limits for Congress.
Oh
And
my
she
god, I
says
want to
that
send
she
her a check.
and she says she will not run. She will not serve for more than 2 terms because the terms are 6 years. So it's 6 years is 1 term. So she will not serve for more than 12 years. She says the reason why is because you need fresh blood, you need fresh ideas, and that's why she, even as a Republican, she's pushing for term limits. So
Huh.
it's yeah.
Yeah.
So
No,
what are your thoughts?
okay. So I absolutely agree.
That's interesting because I mean, here in Sweden, I mean, it's been like when the right actually has proposed term limits, etc. The left has always been really quick. No, we're gonna vote this down. So we have actually like Social Democrats and leftists and the left party wingers. Yeah, we actually have a party which is called literally the Left Party. They're actually been really against term limits, etc.
Well, that makes sense because okay, so like the way I see it, this is the common sense would be why would anybody not be opposed to term limits? Like what's not to like? Like getting rid of corrupt career politicians that can cut corners for big corporate money and come up with crooked deals over the course of decades and stuff like why not end that? But the thing is that leftists are going to be the ones that are going to take advantage of that because they're going to be the ones that are going to be getting elected by throwing out table scraps to the masses, being like, well, here's a little bit of healthcare, here's a little bit of welfare, here's a little bit of like something or other. And so it does make sense that it's leftists doing that. It didn't occur to me that it was going to be leftists that are always the most in favor of that until you mentioned that it was Kirsten Gillibrand is the one that is being opposed. And I want to donate money to this woman just on those two principles alone, that she is running on that platform, that she's running against Kirsten Gillibrand. Kirsten Gillibrand is the woman responsible for bringing Mattress Girl into the contemporary.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. Yes, I know. Prince has that hype on that. So here's the interesting thing, and I don't know how my friends will cope because I'm voting a little bit across the spectrum this year because I've fully been invested in research in my local candidates, and political affiliation isn't. isn't as I know, right? It isn't as important as it was. Political affiliation, the tribalism isn't important at all to me anymore, like it once was. I will admit to that. I thought Democrat, so I have to vote Democrat. But now I'm actually researching, and I'm actually voting for candidates across the political spectrum. And interesting enough, I'm actually voting Republican with one candidate, and it is the candidate who's running against Kirsten Gillibrand. Because here's my issue with Kirsten Gillibrand. I know you have yours, Prince, and they're definitely justified. But Kirsten Gillibrand started off as a moderate because she started off in the House, and when she was elected, she was actually elected as a Democrat in a heavily Republican district. And the reason she did this is her nickname used to be Annie Oakley. When she was campaigning, she's like, I sleep with a shotgun under my bed. She was very much a blue dog Democrat type. And then suddenly, gun control needs to be in place. As soon as she took over Hillary's spot, gun control needs to be in place. And then obviously she has a history, she has a past in law, right? And suddenly now with Kavanaugh, who, okay, he wasn't the nomination I would like, but seriously, it was just no due process to believe all women. And then to just put the cherry on the top of that beautiful Sunday there, guess who introduced her at an event? Just guess who introduced Kirsten Gillibrand at an event here in New York State? Linda Sassour. Linda Sassour introduced.
Talk about a dog whistle. That's a dog whistle right there.
And Linda Sassour referred to Kirsten Gillibrand as our person on the inside. And I was like, I'm done with you, Kirsten. I am done with you. Peace.
Whoa.
Goodbye. For the first time in my life, I will be voting for a Republican this year. And I was just like, peace.
Yeah. God.
Linda Sarsour is actually a very interesting character because she has actually tried to comment on the Swedish election as well. Didn't go so well. She didn't really get any attention, but I mean, since the Swedish Democrat actually gained a little bit more power this election, basically every single fucking queer feminist, fourth wave intersectional, whatever. Prince, can you please say that sentence?
Fourth wave intersectional feminist.
Thank you. You coined the term, so that's why I'm giving you that.
On his tongue. It's poison on his tongue. No, go.
To help facilitate conversation there, can we just call them crazy people like we used to?
Yeah, that too. But
they're crazy people that all see the same exact collective delusion. They see the same exact hallucination all at once every single time. So
yeah, but anyways, here
full of crackhead.
I mean, even Bono from U2 actually started to comment about the Swedish election, calling everyone to be white, racist, and everything. And I was kind of like, oh, girl, you don't know what you're talking about here. You have no fucking idea how it's like living here. You live in your fucking goddamn $1 million mansion without having to actually interfere with this kind of people that are actually bringing problems. But you are the one who are actually specifically telling us that we are racist because we actually want to, be able to actually be free. But sure. Yeah, we're racist, all the bunch of us. Of course we are. So yeah, we're being kind of like, actually, Scandinavian societies in general has started to actually, shift from being really open to outside to actually going, inwards instead. So there's been a lot more cooperation between Norway, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, and Estonia for some reason, just because of this recent political events.
So, I mean, I know I kind of asked it earlier. Anyone nervous about what we're going to see on November 7th? Or I know you're outside of it a little bit, Berserker, but I know Farrell and Prince. Anyone a little bit nervous about what you're going to see, even in your home state on November 7th? I know there's national, but there's also your home state. Are you nervous about what you're going to see that morning? Or are you fairly confident how it's going to go in your home state? Everything's up in the air for here in New York, where I'm honestly just like, oh. But
dude, I'm in Arkansas. How do you think we're gonna vote?
My feeling of okay, so I live in the hotbed of Antifa territory, in the city limits of Seattle. It's not actually so bad. I mean, it is bad it's not like there isn't an actual Antifa sticker on the like one of the corners that I walk by, like, you know, at least every other day or every 3 days, depending upon where I'm walking, you know, like which grocery store I decide to go to, you know. But then, yeah, there's like Antifa stickers essentially on my street corner. So it is bad. Like, that's not like, because that's like, you know, knowing that I am a person that if they knew what I looked like, they would maybe want to target me, and they do that, you know. There's a little bit of a fear, but at the same time, the Seattle Police Department is actually, out of all of the places, you know, like Berkeley, Portland, and Seattle, those are the 3 really, really bad big cities. Berkeley isn't really all that big. It's really, you know, basically a suburb of San Francisco. But out of those 3 places, the Seattle Police Department does by far the best job. They actually do their job. Whereas in Berkeley and Portland, they don't do their job, and they let the violence happen. So I'm not particularly worried about anything. And the other thing is that I think that the Antifa foot soldiers, like the actual ones that are willing to commit acts of domestic terrorism, I'm pretty sure by now they've learned that they will lose. And every time, like, I just had Chadwick Moore on my channel last week. And if anyone listened to the testimony, because he was with the Proud Boys in New York City on the night that the supposed Proud Boys targeted the poor innocent people who happened to be wearing all black for no reason whatsoever. And, you know, and it's like, no. Okay. What Antifa does.
Bio.
Okay. So what Antifa tends to do is, at this point, is I like maybe they thought that they were gonna like win on Inauguration Day, and right after, like, maybe they thought that there were a whole lot of more of them, and if they caused enough of a ruckus, somehow there'd be some outcome. And then, you know, a year and a half went by, and they just, every time there was a confrontation between them and, you know, the blue collar guys, they got their asses whooped. At this point, they're doing nothing more than cry bullying. They're trying to instigate a reaction from people so that they can play victim. And that's what I think is really, really happening. And so I think that there was a little bit of stuff that happened over the past couple of weeks, but I think that what they were really hoping was to get things like the New York City altercation to happen, where they get, you know, they get this one teeny little clip of these guys punching and kicking this one Antifa guy, and then they say that that's all there is to it, except for we know that they had vandalized the place a few days ago. Then it came out that they had beat up this other guy. Then it came out that they, you know, and so like all this like stupid stuff. And so I'm not really that worried. But my thing is, I don't know who is going to win. I don't want to count any chickens before they hatch. I think that the Democrats, I'm pretty positive that the Democrats unregistered me to vote, that I'm one of the people that they did that to, because they do that. I was registered with the Democratic Party, and people just magically end up not registered, and maybe they thought that I was going to flip or something for some reason. And I just don't know. I really, really don't know. I really think, though, that if the Republicans lose and lose hard, that's also, the Democrats lose and lose hard, then that's going to be, and which I would lean towards. Like, I just don't think that there's too many people who didn't at least hear about Antifa at some point over the past year and a half attacking people, and that can't go over super well, you know, like that can't be something that people are going to be like, oh, well, you know, like this happened on Trump's watch, well, I blame Trump. No, people aren't that dumb. It's more like, okay, that means that the Democrats are crazy and hiring domestic terrorists, and that's going to take people out to vote. And so that's my inclination, is to believe that this is going to end well, and end well for the Republican turnout. And I think that could hopefully teach the Democrats a much needed lesson. But I also I don't put anything past them, including stealing a number of seats.
Well, well for me it's interesting because, well, first of all, as I mentioned earlier, I know you agreed with that. Is I, even as a Democrat, I want the Democrats to lose to snap them out of the crazy. I don't know if it would work, but that's honestly why I'm pushing for them losing, and it feels very odd to say that as a lifelong Democrat. But in regards to Portland, because we mentioned that earlier, I've heard stories and I've heard people reporting, and I have friends in the area, that there are shops in Portland that put Antifa stickers on their windows in hopes that if Antifa does, riot or go have their little spaz attacks, that they won't destroy the property.
Yeah, I've heard.
That's their blood on the door jam,
I know the blood on the door. Yeah, absolutely. In New York City, now what's interesting for Antifa in New York City is they're recording with their little cell phones, but they seem to forget it's New York City. There's a camera on every freaking corner. There's a camera pretty much above almost every doorway. So
yeah,
really, so a lot of footage came forward. So because a lot of people were freaking out that there weren't enough Proud Boys charged and everything, but a lot of the evidence was showing that Antifa initiated attacks. This image showing Antifas with bottles, and so there's a whole lot more context to that, but obviously that's not being covered in mainstream media. But if you look for it, you will find that information. Now, for me, New York State, I do fear, and I think Cuomo will probably win. I'm still pushing against that, like so many other New Yorkers, especially because there's a lot of Democrats that are not fans of Cuomo. Cuomo's hated across the political spectrum, by the far left and obviously the far right. He's just not liked. But I still think he'll probably pull it through for his third term, even though I think he's gonna ditch New York State to try to run for president in 2020, because all of his debates, he's gone after Trump, not his opponent. He's just been going after Trump. We get it. You're campaigning against Trump. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, hey, Kevin, your audio is weird. Could you maybe unplug your microphone and plug it back in or something? See if it fixes it.
Okay, 1 second.
Well, he's working on that. Prince, you mentioned the possibility that you've been dropped from the voter registration rolls.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Most states have online lookup tools. I know mine does, and I checked yours out. Yours does too, so I sent you a link for that.
Oh,
but
thanks.
Anyone out in the audience, basically, quick Google search. Most states have their voter registration lookup tools online, and that can tell you if you're in an active or an inactive status. It may be a little too close to the election to do anything here. Most states, there's like a 30-day cutoff period before the election, but it's definitely worth looking into if you want to keep an eye on your stuff.
So, I mean, from an outside perspective, again, when it comes to the American political landscape in general, what I don't get, but then again, I'm European, so I mean, we have a much stronger ties to one another, perhaps. But I mean, what I don't really get is, why are you so goddamn stubborn with trying to kill each other just because of political reasons? I mean, seriously.
Every man needs a hobby.
Yeah, true. We get bored.
So I am listed as an inactive voter.
Oh wow!
And I voted. I voted in 2016, so they did it to me.
Yeah. So, anyways,
I would get with the Secretary of State's office and raise some hell.
Yeah, and when it comes to what I'm trying to say is, United States is actually, from a European perspective, you're actually on the verge of civil war, and you don't realize that. That's the problem. That's actually the main issue when it comes to the United States in general, is that you are on the brink of civil war, and you kind of went like, oh, well, yeah, everything's going to be good, blah, 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 in the end.
No.
Well,
a lot of us realize that. No, a lot of us realize that. I think Farrell would agree with me. I don't know if Prince would, but a lot of us realize that. The thing is, there's this energy on both sides that kind of want it, and that's what's sad. That's actually what's also kind of frightening, is this energy on both sides that want it. So it's not the fact we don't see it; it's the fact there are people who actually want it because they see the other is so detrimental to the future of our country. So they see the other side is so detrimental. So that's the thing, and it was interesting though, because like someone pointed out, and I saw this in an interview, I forget which interview it was, but someone said America seems to be focusing on the smallest things to divide itself. Why is that? And the person responded, it's because America got so privileged and comparatively to the outside world. America got so privileged, so wealthy that it got bored. So it had to focus on the stupid shit. And this just grew. And that's why we are where we are today. We got bored because we're so comfortable in comparative globally, our privilege, our wealth, our comfort. We got so bored in that we had to look for things to be mad about. And this is where we are. But yes, the thing is, I know we are aware of that as well. I know I'm
We're
just
like the
speaking for
married
myself,
couple that
but
has spent the last 30 years in the presence 24/7, 365 with each other, where you're just absolutely pissed off at anything the other person does, no matter how insignificant. Just sitting there stewing because that bitch is eating crackers again.
Yeah, but okay, but first of all, Hammer, you're still actually breaking up. So if you could maybe take
It can be a glitch in the
Okay.
cable or something.
Oh, shoot.
That happens a
Okay.
lot.
That's
yeah.
his
So
voice is like that.
what you should do is go in and out of the chat, and then you'll come back.
I'll go out. I'll come back in. Yeah, I'll come back in. All right.
Yeah. So I think though that this thing about the Civil War, I think that everybody in the conservative areas, like people in Arkansas and upstate New York around where Liberal Hammer lives, they see this as like, whoa, don't push our people, because we've been raised our whole lives to think that we might have to defend ourselves with firearms and stuff. And like Kevin, the Liberal Hammer, he's talked about that to me before, and every person that I talk to on YouTube from red areas, they all say that. They're like, yeah, we almost entirely own guns, and they think of they think a lot about the military and the Second Amendment and all these things, and then the left is the one that wants the war, but they have no concept of what it might possibly look like, and that's where it gets confusing, because the right-leaning people don't want the war. They are eager to step up and defend people, to defend themselves. But the left is like, they only want to start the fight; they don't want to finish it.
Not to mention, and I have a uniquely Southern perspective on this one, because we lost the last Civil War, if you remember.
Just a little bit.
What we ended up having to deal with after that was nearly 50 years of an incredibly humiliating Reconstruction. We're still considered to be the backwoods, idiots of the place, even though quite a bit of our intellectual diversity comes from this region. And quite frankly, I mean, we had our places completely sacked. No, it's not good for anybody to do that. I don't care if you're on the left or the right. War is not what you fucking want.
Yeah.
See, I can only take this from, a European perspective. War is not nice. We have seen that throughout the Cold War, the Second World War, the First World War, the Napoleon era. I mean, literally, we never had this long amount of peace in Europe as now, and we still had a couple of wars, both in the Caucasian Mountains, in the Yugoslav.
That's racist.
Yeah,
that's a racist.
Yeah. But still, we had that. We know exactly what war brings. And so, trust me, American left, you don't want war. It's really, really awful.
Well,
and by the way, the Caucasian Mountains is where the pumpkin spice mines are. Many people aren't aware of this.
Fuck. My cousins need to they need to get tourist visas to go to that. Anyway, so I think to an extent, though, because if we look at America, and please disagree with me if you want, Farrell or Prince, outside of obviously the Civil War, since the Civil War, with maybe the exception of Pearl Harbor, American soil has remained untouched for the most part. And then there was 9/11, but overall, in regards to there's 9/11, but I mean in regards to enemy boots coming on our soil, we have remained untouched. We have not really felt, we felt, attacks, which in the grand perspective actually weren't as large, but we have not actually felt the impact of war at our doorstep. And I think that has desensitized us to just how brutal it can actually be. I mean, do you think I'm wrong in that perspective?
Wrong? Are you kidding? You eloquently stated what I've been saying for quite a while. I mean, we are basically our current generation. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go that route. Since I'm the ranking person on here, our current generation are basically victims of the previous generation's successes. We've gotten to the point where we think we can be that petty, where something so insignificant seems like a major life or death thing. This is not good for us.
Actually, what I would love to actually see more from the United States is actually just unity in general. I mean, sure, you don't have to agree with one another, but at least you can come to a conclusion that, you know what, we both want the same thing in the end, so to say. We still want everyone to have a good life, but the left in the United States seems to be really rock hard set on, just to destroy everything to rebuild something new that isn't really existing. And that's the problem when it comes to the left United States. They have never learned anything because they've been so cut off from the rest of the United States. I mean, just take, for instance, how West Coasters really like to actually look down on especially Southerners and even just East Coasters in general, especially rural East Coasters. And they're really like, yeah, whatever.
When people say East Coasters, what they really mean is everywhere from what they mean is everywhere from Washington D.C. up to Philadelphia, and also in Maine, Maine, New England, like a very select handful of major metropolitan urban areas. But that's
don't, exactly what I'm referring to. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the divisions. We were actually taught this in high school for some reason.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, here's a fun thing when it comes to Europeans. We know extensively about your political systems. We know extensively about what you consider to be New England, the East Coast, West Coast, the South, etc., and the inlands. We know exactly what you're talking about. So, yeah. We actually, it's actually mandatory to actually know every single god-fucking state.
God, here it's like you go into our geography class. It's like Europe is a very interesting country.
Yeah, I know, right? Europe had these few moments, and then it just stopped existing because it wasn't important once we came about. That once we came about, it just wasn't important at all because we just made it all that. No. But yeah, no, I definitely can see that because I've had interactions. I remember the first time I made a friend from another country through social media. They knew so much about America, stuff I did not know, and I knew nothing about them. They actually were located in Europe. I'm trying to remember exactly where, but I remember it was just like, yeah, and it really highlighted just in general how self-absorbed we can be. But I think that's obviously another thing that's damaging us because then we're not really learning from the world around us as well. But do you mind if we jump forward to one thing? Because I know I started asking that question about the president, the new president of Brazil. Was it Jair Bolsonaro? So he's been compared by especially a lot of more left-wing media to Trump in regards to a lot of rhetoric. He did scream the lock up his opponents that he did. He did say, well, for him, it was expel people who do not agree with the best. He actually just from an article I read, now I only read one about this, declared the country truly a Christian nation, and that's what it's going to be ruled by. And obviously, he has views on a lot of social issues, even homosexuality, that obviously are not the best. But a lot of people have compared him to Trump, though. But to me, like Trump had when Trump mouths off, to me, I'm not. Okay, I don't take it to heart because I take it as serious as as a little bit of my drunk uncle that mouths off about stuff, and then the actual actions aren't as exaggerated as the words, if that makes sense.
Actually, when in European media, he's actually been compared to Viktor Orban, which is the current prime minister of Hungary. So yeah.
Yes.
All I know is I'm not messing with the Brazilians. I've seen what they do with wax. I want nothing to do with that country.
Oh yeah, God, no, a hairy dude like no, I'm not doing no. But I mean, like in regards to the rhetoric that comes from the now president of Brazil. I mean, do you guys feel like he is do you think it's right for some to compare him to Trump? I realize like a lot of people compare him.
I think that
not at all.
Okay. That's what I wanted to get that reaction. Thank you for jumping in there with that.
I think that it's completely absurd. I think that it's just another one of these cases of like, I mean, somebody's cat could die and they'd be like, that damn Trump again. And it's just like, what? No, this guy he's like nothing like Trump. Actually, like I can't think of a single like besides the fact that he's an icky, mean man. Like that's it. That's literally the only thing that I really saw in common with Trump. And the only he said very unfortunate things about the gays from what I saw, but I don't know what the politics are at all like down there. I just don't know anything about it.
His politics, I mean, from our perspective over the pond, he sounds a lot like Franco, and he sounds a real lot like Orban, and I mean, basically, we see him as he could possibly become a new dictator. That's really what we see. I mean, Trump can't be a dictator. I mean, first of all, what would happen if this became a dictatorship? Well, civil war, and guess what happens? You get lots of funny guns that can do a lot of damage. Just go to your next high school and see what a gun can do to you.
Trump isn't interested in being a dictator. He never was. He never showed any sign of it.
Exactly.
It's very clear. The reason that they said that was it was entirely projection because of the totalitarian aspirations of the Democratic Party, who wanted to be a dictatorship. And we know that now. We know that by how they treated Kavanaugh. We know how they were treating freedom of speech. We don't know what they would do if they were in charge. And that's why they started saying all that stuff about Trump, and it was completely unfounded. He was just saying, I hate you guys. That was pretty much his whole message. And so there's this guy. What I find very interesting is that people are saying all of a sudden, and this might just be an internet rumor, but they're saying that this guy might join forces with Colombia to invade Venezuela.
Actually, yeah, that's not actually too far-fetched. And I mean, from a historical point of view, I mean, it would kind of be logical. The thing is, when it comes to, I know I always talk about this perspective, but really, we have another viewpoint of history. The thing is, if you compare this president to Trump, you're actually gravely underestimating the guy, because I mean the Brazilian Constitution and much of other Latin American constitutions in general actually are kind of open for dictatorships, and that's where this kicks in. That if he would like, he can actually become, well, Trump would actually have nightmares about this guy, and I'm sure that actually he has, because he's actually the opposite of what Trump is. The only thing they have in common is perhaps the choosing words, but other than that, they're completely different.
They're white males.
He's Brazilian, for fuck's sake. Anyway.
He's Brazilian, for fuck's sake. Well, I mean, I have to say though,
there's always going to be some coffee mixed in a cream.
Anyway. But interestingly enough, because there was a lot of corruption. What's funny is they're describing Brazil up until this point, like the past decade in Brazil. I read an article really describing the conditions under more of that leftist, under that more socialist, take on obviously programs, the government, corruption, all that stuff. And what's very interesting though is I'm seeing this, and people now on the left are flipping out about Brazil. One of my friends who's very left-leaning, he's a professor. He's actually from Ecuador. He posted about, after the election, I feel my Brazilian brothers and sisters, so on and so forth, I feel sorry for you. I'm here, I'm supporting you. But like a lot of what you're supporting, the views you're supporting, the programs you're supporting are already turning some of our states into environments that are becoming like what Brazil was that led to this man getting elected. What you are pushing is what created the turmoil that allowed him to win. that allowed this to take place. And they don't see it. And they won't, I don't think most of them won't see it, unfortunately. But I will say one thing. I am not sure if you guys really followed that study. I forget what the study was, but or if it was a survey that really, when they looked into it, we are letting on the left, like what, 8% of the population lead the discussion. Like it's of like 8% are of the far left, but because they scream the loudest.
Yeah,
well,
when you get a small minority that shouts down the majority and basically does that, I mean, you're going to get that. I mean, it crowds out other voices.
Well, yeah, and the reason why is because they're the hallway monitors, and the principals would be the social media giants, and the hallway monitors report to, or the vice principals rather, the hallway monitor. You know, I don't know if you had this in this school systems that you guys were in elementary school and middle school. So they did this thing. I don't know why they did this little program. It was so awful and demeaning, and of course they never wanted me to be the hallway monitor. They gave kids permission to have some form of disciplinary rights over other kids, and it wasn't very severe. Like they couldn't like give you detention, but they could like if the hallway monitor kid, and they usually like put a sash on the kid, and the hallway monitor kid saw some other kid doing something wrong, they were to report it to the vice principal, and then the vice principal would discipline the kid. And it was this like setup for like training kids how to be like, you know,
snitches get stitches.
Yeah, it was an entire system based around snitching, and it was like they were training the checkmark people on Twitter for, because it was people you know, like within 10 years of my age, so you know, people aged late 20s, early 40s, largely were raised in this environment where we had that, and that manifested itself in the current year. And those 8%ers are not the people, but they are the hallway monitors, and they do get to report directly to the social media companies. So, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just like you get anyone any slight bit of power. It's just training them early on. Kind of reminds me of that South Park episode with Cartman as Dog the hallway monitor. Not like that.
Oh, is that the respect my authority?
Yeah, it's one where he's going around with the mullet and all that stuff and all the gold jewelry and stuff.
Okay. I need to watch that one. There's so many episodes of South Park. Yeah.
So I actually have an article that I'm curious to know if either of you had heard, because obviously there's a lot of stuff coming out against the right. There's a lot of left coming out, a lot of stuff coming out against the left, and I'm trying to find it. But there's a politician that apparently, let me find, I have it on my Facebook, where apparently there's connections to where there were articles about, a biblical basis for war. GOP polls called killing non-Christian men who don't yield a biblical basis for war. And this has been connected to a politician, Washington State Representative Matt Shea has taken credit of a manifesto of sorts titled Biblical Basis for War that outlines a coming holy war, a battle that would require killing any non-Christian who does not yield.
Let me look on that. Shea.
I can send you
the
want me
to yield, there better be oil wrestling involved.
Wait, how do you spell his name?
Let me. This freaking thing keeps popping shit up. Sorry, Matt Shea. It's Matt Shea. He's the representative for Washington State.
Oh, okay. So Matt Shea.
Yeah, and you can.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna look at him. I'm gonna look at him because he's, you know, in my state. So howdy, I'm Matt, a design-based. No, that's not it.
Yeah.
Wait, it says SH, not C. Okay.
SHER. Yeah. Biblical Basis for War was the titled document. Yeah.
So, okay, so he lives in Spokane, which is I mean, yeah, it's pretty red over in Spokane. That's Eastern Washington. Okay, I'm looking at that. Al Jazeera's reported upon it. Oh, they're interested. I don't know.
The left, it's all over right now. Like it popped up today and then it blew up. I saw one and then I'm seeing it all over now.
Okay, well, the Seattle Times is reporting on it, and the Seattle Times is actually one of the is the more reputable of the of the papers in Seattle. Like the papers that you're going to find are the Seattle Times and the Seattle Stranger. The Seattle Stranger is trash. That's Dan Savage's publication, and so it's mostly intersectional feminist trash. That's where Lindy West got her start. But and because the Stranger is, and the Stranger was like the hipster paper for about 20 years, and then it just went totally downhill this decade, and everybody's like, ew, you guys are horrible. And now the Seattle Times is a little bit better. So they're reporting on it. I'm going to read their reporting, and actually we can screen share it. How about that? So let me just make sure that I'm not going to dox myself somehow. I don't think I...
But it was interesting because like part of it was like any males, like if there's people who resist, you only kill the males that are resisting. It was very interesting. I only read part of it. I mean, it was a more recent one, and I read part of his response to it. That apparently this is just like a discussion. It was like a discussion of a theory and stuff. So,
oh come on. So. I forgot to present to everyone. Hold on. Okay.
That is so trippy.
Yeah.
Every time I'm like,
so, stop doing that. Okay. So, and the page keeps redirecting me to Maria Cantwell, who might be, running against him. So Washington state lawmaker Matt Shea defends advocacy for Holy Army as Spokane sheriff refers his writing to FBI. In a video posted Wednesday, Shea argues that the United States is a Christian nation and asserts that his detractors are part of a so-called counter-state made up of Marxists and Islamists. Washington State Representative Matt Shea acknowledged Wednesday he had distributed a 4-page manifesto titled Biblical Basis for War, which describes a Christian God as a warrior, details the composition and strategy of a holy army, and condemns abortion and same-sex marriage. This document is organized in 14 sections with multiple tiers of bullet points and a smattering of biblical citations. Under one heading, Rules of War, it makes a chilling prescription for enemies who flout biblical law. After the document was leaked online Tuesday, the Spokane Valley Republican insisted he was not promoting violence and that the message had been taken out of context. First of all, it was a summary of a series of sermons on biblical war in the Old Testament as part of a larger discussion on the history of warfare, Shea said in a Facebook Live video on Wednesday. This document in and of itself was not a secret. I've actually talked about portions of this document publicly. In the video, Shea also complains about a recently published Rolling Stone profile that characterizes him as an extremist. He argues that the United States is a Christian nation, and he asserts that his detractors are part of a so-called counter-state made up of Marxists and Islamists. He dismisses criticism as nothing more than smears and slander and innuendo and implication. He also delivers into a philosophy known as just war theory, which has been endorsed by many mainstream Christians. But critics of Shea who embrace far-right conspiracy theories, see, this is how you can tell that this is not such a bad paper, because they at least who embraces wait, hold on.
Shea, that's actually a shampoo over here. Oh well.
Well, could be worse. Could be Shea Lambie.
Yeah. Oh well.
I'm trying to like look if there's going to be anything more interesting. I guess.
Well,
I kind of want to like look at the. Okay,
look up the bulletin points. If you look up the bulletin points.
So far, what I'm noticing from this is that he said that the United States is a Christian nation. That's the only thing I'm taking seriously as some kind of like problematic thing, because it's not. It's a secular nation, and that's bad. He shouldn't say
Well,
that.
what's being highlighted is the bulletin points in a lot of articles that are part of this. I'm not seeing the biblical basis for war, and then there's like biblical basis for war, and then it does have like holy call. Okay, I'll let Tim say that.
So it's a table of contents, and they're trying to. That's just cheap. That's just pathetic. That's weak. That's just like, okay, well, this. So this is obviously. Let me guess. This guy's running against Maria Cantwell. I'm just gonna take a look. Maria Cantwell is she is
a lesbian.
I don't know, but I know. I want to see if she's in Spokane. Is what
yeah. I really hate to be that guy, but I mean, it's very, very, very early in the morning here, and I'm actually just
yeah. We're about to head down.
I kind of gotta get going too, because it's like for me it's 1:30 in the morning.
It's like 6:33 here in the morning, so yeah.
No, that's totally fine. I just I didn't really have anything more to say, which is why I was wanting to look at this, because I want to know where she's running. Is she running? Why? Where is she running?
She's a mystery.
43rd Legislative District. Where is that? Please show me. Please show me. Because if this whole thing is just like a negative thing, what is the 43rd Legislative District of Washington State? Because it could easily just be her little conspiracy thing, and that's what is the 43rd Legislative District, Washington? What does that even mean? Okay, I don't fucking know. I don't really have all that much to say anymore. Anyhow,
so it covers certain parts of Seattle, including downtown, First Hill, Capitol Hill, South Lake Union, Washington Park, Madison Park, East Lake, Montlake, Portage Bay, Wallingford, Fremont, and a couple of parts of Finney Ridge.
Okay, thanks, because that's definitely not the same place as him then. So maybe I'm just getting that on the. So yeah, I hadn't heard anything about that. It doesn't really surprise me that he's a Bible thumper that is in Spokane. I don't really have that much to say about it. But before we go, I did have one funny just terminology that I came up with. If anybody ever tells you that millennials are generation snowflake, tell them no, millennials are generation hallway monitor.
Yeah, I could probably say that.
Nice. Yes, definitely.
Oh yeah.
Well, it was great. It was great being on, everyone. It was good seeing everyone. I'm gonna get ready, going to bed. I will see everyone later.
Lucky you.
All right, and wait, I'm gonna go take a look at the chat just to see if I happen to get a super chat that I didn't look at, because I should do that. So I don't seem to see anything. Okay, I know, and you guys can totally go. And I guess I'm gonna go. I'm gonna end this. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Good night, guys. Bye.